I want to talk about the tax provisions of a so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I really can't argue with the president over the fact that this bill is big. It's 1,000 pages of a big bonanza for billionaires. I know that we have been accused of characterizing this as a bonanza for billionaires, and the numbers will bear that out. I know, Madam Chair, you're fond of fact-checking stuff, so I hope that you will do that on behalf of the American public when it comes to talking about how those folks under $100,000 are going to experience such a great growth in wealth and income. You've heard a lot about work requirements and how that's going to generate all these savings. You heard about how these lazy little boys that are in the basement playing video games and saying to mom, you bring down some more potato chips, are going to, that's going to cost $800 billion in savings. How many of these boys do we have? Are there that many video games? I would have to ask. You know, we're talking about how we're just going to rout out waste, fraud, and abuse, and that's somehow going to generate over $1 trillion in savings. I'm asking you, even those of you who are not that good in math, to try to figure this out with me. Let's begin the analysis of this bill, not with all the numbers that we're all going to be throwing around here this morning, but let's just begin this analysis with a moral question. Should children go hungry or be left to suffer or die from treatable diseases? And if your answer to that, anybody, if your answer is no, then just sort of reason backwards from that precipice and see if the justification of this bill sort of unravels. I'm so happy to be the last person to speak on this panel because we have heard from our colleagues and on other committees about the harms that this bill is going to do to millions and millions of our constituents, fellow Americans. We're going to cut $230 billion out of SNAP. We're going to kick 13.7 million people off their health insurance. We're going to trigger $500 billion in cuts from Medicare, those of us who are protecting seniors here on this panel. We're going to reduce educational opportunity for American children who are least able. There are kids who just might not be chosen. I was one of those kids. I wasn't chosen, and I didn't have any choice. And this is who we're going to take money from. We're sitting here bragging about so-called savings. And what are we going to do with these savings? What are we going to do with the savings? Are we going to take these savings and reduce our debt? Nope, we're not going to do that. These tax cuts are so massive that we don't have enough kids to starve. We don't have enough people to deny health care. So we're just going to ask Americans to finance tax cuts for billionaires on the national debt, on the credit card. I just paid off a credit card. I was so relieved. It was the first night's sleep I had in a long time. And we have people here. I know my good friend, the chairman of our committee, does not like debt. Well, he used to not like debt, but he kind of likes debt today. The JCT scored this bill at $3.8 trillion. $3.8 trillion. But that's not even the real score. Why not? Because of all the budget gimmicks in there. They've got all kind of budget tricks in this Billionaire Bonanza bill, like cutting the budget window after 9 years and making dozens of provisions that benefit regular Americans temporary to get them through the 2026 cycle, to get them through President Trump's tenure as president, assuming that he won't get a third term. Otherwise, he's going to have to do something else. But that being the case, I mean, it is so cynical to tell people we're going to give these to you. We're going to have permanent tax cuts for wealthy people. But we're going to make this temporary, just long enough to trick you into believing that it helps. So, what is the cost of this bill after we strip away all the gimmicks? It's going to be, not including the interest on the debt, it's going to be at least $5 trillion. So, my twist on Mark Twain's statement, there are lies, damn lies, and then there's trickle-down economics. You know what? We've heard, at least, I'm 74 years old, and I swear to God, I can remember when the talk of the trickle started. And it hasn't trickled yet. And this bill is not going to start the trickle. The so-called fiscal hawks will try to make you believe that this country club urban legend that tax cuts pay for themselves. It has never worked, but it just has not stopped the talking point. That's what it is. That they claim that this bill will generate $2.6 trillion of revenue from economic growth. There is not one. Produce them. Fact check this, Madam Chair. Where is the economist who will back up those numbers? Where they at? They ain't here. Deficits aside, this bill is ugly, as we say, because it is ultimately a betrayal of the contract that we have made with the American people, and especially to our babies and to our working people. You know, it's a union hall, working man's bill, but it is all for the millionaires and billionaires. The so-called no tax on tips. That's a distraction from the windfall that they're giving to the richest people in the country. Let's just put the facts out. Let's talk some numbers. I've been just hollering and hooping. Let's put some numbers out. Fact check this, Madam Chair. People who make over $1 million per year on average get a tax cut of $81,500 under this bill. Fact check this, Madam Chair. People who make under $50,000 per year on average get a tax cut of $265. That means a person who makes over $1 million per year on average gets 310 times what a person making under $50,000 gets. Now, this notion that if we don't pass this one big, beautiful bill, that taxes are going to go up for everybody, this is a choice. Tax breaks for billionaires and millionaires is not tethered to our doing something for regular people. Y'all chose to do that. It's perfectly possible to draft tax legislation in a way that doesn't provide the most fortunate among us with a windfall. But y'all chose to do it. Now, in the Ways and Means markup, we stayed up all night, and I do empathize with you, Madam Chair, for having to stay up all night, because we stayed up all night. And I see some of my colleagues are still here, staying up all night again. We offered 33 amendments, 33, to keep the wealthiest from getting the benefit, most of the benefit from this tax cut. So we suggested that, there shouldn't be any tax cuts for individuals making over $400,000 a year. Republicans voted no. We suggested that, if they make $10 million, we shouldn't give them a tax cut. Republicans voted no. We said, how about $100 million? Republicans voted no. We said $1 billion. They voted no. You know how they voted. No one was just too rich for this tax cut. in the worldview of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the Ways and Means Committee. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, the JCT numbers show that this bill is even worse for people on the bottom rung. By 2029, according to JCT numbers, after the temporary tax cuts for people making under $30,000 for a year on an aggregate, they're gonna, as a group, they're gonna be paying $5 billion more in taxes. That's a big tax cut, Madam Chair. Fact check that. Now, imagine that, Madam Chair. There's so many ugly things in this bill, in this 1,000 pages of this big, beautiful bill. My 5 minutes could not possibly do them justice. Making it easier. I couldn't believe it when I saw this, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman. I couldn't believe it when they proposed to take away the taxes on silencers for guns. What, Madam Chair, why? There's a $200 tax on buying silencers for guns. And then we're gonna kick 2 million children off the child tax credit. You know, they brag about doubling the child tax credit, but Madam Chair, the poorest, the neediest, the most vulnerable children get nothing, unless their parents earn money. You know, and what I say is that, why don't we just make the kids go to work? Just cut to the chase. Tell kids, y'all got to start working. Maybe cut some of them school hours and go work as the shampoo girl so that your mama can get money to do what we know did. We cut poverty in half when we expanded the child tax credit to include the poorest, the 17 million kids that this bill doesn't cover. So, at the end of the day, the main thing, let's keep the main thing, that this legislation before us will make Americans more in debt, will make them hungrier, will make them sicker, will make them more ignorant. They'll be falling behind other nations, will be upending national security, all to lavish more and more and more and more on the luckiest and wealthiest among us. And Madam Chair, and I just want to point out to y'all, full disclosure, I'm woke.